all. Today we are going to have a webinar on A-Sathyameva Jayate, A-Satyameva Jayate, Post-Truth India. This lecture shall be delivered by Dr. Meera Nanda, visiting faculty, IISER Mohali. We have with us two pillars of PSL, Dr. TRG and Dr. Ramanujam. We have seen registration not only from Tamil Nadu, but from other parts of India as well. And hence this meeting shall be in English, apart from speaker can speak only in English. So we'd like to have a brief introduction of Tamil Nadu Science Forum and the speaker. This program schedule of this is the program schedule of the webinar. Firstly, Dr. Sethuraman shall introduce the TNSF, followed by the introduction of the speaker by Dr. John. Then Dr. Meera Nanda shall talk about 45 minutes and we will have a question answer section thereabout. So vote of thanks shall be done by Sarla Kumar, our joint secretary. We will try to wind up the section by 6 p.m. This is our schedule. PSL is part of TNSF and it started functioning in 2018. Although TNSF is functioning from 1980 onwards, PSL came into existence when we decided to strengthen the activities of TNSF in the higher science area. We have conducted 44 lectures so far, and this is our 45th lecture. The first lecture was held in July 2018 as Stephen Hawking's memorial lecture. PSL used to have its lecture in the hall and it's adopted virtual meetings during the pandemic period. We hope we may have few more virtual meetings till the pandemic is over. Now, some of the so we request you to change the name, change to a name. Some of the participants, the names are not shown. It is shown by the device name, and we would like you to change your actual name. That's so that we will be able to communicate with you. So we will mute all the mics except the speaker and request all of you to raise your hand if you have any question. So when the question and answer session starts, we may unmute the mic of those who wish to ask direct question to the speaker. As the lecture progresses and any question arises, yes, you can also type your question in the chat window. Your questions will be read and answered during the question answer section. So we'd like to get the feedback of this webinar and from you, and we have posted a Google form. The link is also provided, going to be provided in the chat box. You just click the link and provide your feedback. We also like you to become member of Tamil Nadu Science Forum. We are also going to provide a form for that. Once you fill up the form, you can pay the subscription through Google Pay. That will also be provided in the chat window. We are also running a Google group for PSL. So you can subscribe to the Google group, and that's by sending a mail, popular-science-lectures plus subscribe at googlegroups.com. If you send a mail, and you will become a member of that group. We are also running a Telegram group. Now I'm going to provide a link for the chat in the Telegram group in the chat window. That's also going to be in the chat window. You can click the link and become a member of the Telegram group as well. So, so with this, we will start with introduction of Tamil Nadu Science Forum by Dr. Sethuraman. Dr. Sethuraman, please. Sethuraman is logged in. No? Sundaru, you have to provide and host.
Good evening to all.
Yeah.
Tamil Nadu Science Forum மூலமாக ஒரு சிறப்பான ஏற்பாட்டில் PSL 45வது கூட்டத்தில் உங்கள் அனைவரையும் சந்திப்பதில் பெருமகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறோம். இந்த PSL நிகழ்வானது தமிழகம் முழுவதும் பல மாவட்டங்களில் பறந்து தற்போது திருவள்ளூர், திருச்சி, கிருஷ்ணகிரி போன்ற மாவட்டங்களில் முன்னெடுப்பு செய்யவும் ஏற்பாடுகள் நடைபெற்று கொண்டிருக்கிறது. இது ஒரு அறிவியல் இயக்கத்தினுடைய மக்களுக்கான அறிவியலுக்கான ஒரு மிக சரியான ஒரு பாதையாக விளங்கி கொண்டிருக்கிறது. இதுக்கு வழிகாட்டி கொண்டிருக்கிற அனைவருக்கும் தமிழ்நாடு அறிவியல் இயக்கம் மாநில மையத்தின் சார்பில் மனமார்ந்த நன்றிகளையும் வாழ்த்துக்களையும் தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறோம். தமிழ்நாடு அறிவியல் இயக்கம் 1980 1980 அறிவியலை மக்களுக்காக கொண்டு செல்ல வேண்டும் என்ற நோக்கத்திற்காக துவங்கப்பட்டது. அறிவியல் ஒரு ஏமாற்று விஷயமாகவோ அறிவியல் ஒரு ஆச்சரியப்பட வேண்டிய விஷயமாகவோ இருக்கக்கூடாது. அறிவியலை அனைவரும் பயன்படுத்த வேண்டும். தேவையின் அடிப்படையில் மனிதனுடைய அடுத்த கட்ட வாழ்வியல் பரிணாமங்களுக்காகவும் பொருளாதார பிரச்சனைகளை தீர்ப்பதற்காகவும் பயன்பட வேண்டும் என்ற நோக்கத்துடன் தமிழ்நாடு அறிவியல் இயக்கம் துவக்கப்பட்டு தற்போது தமிழ்நாடு அறிவியல் இயக்கத்தில் 1/3 பகுதி பெண்கள் அடிப்படையில் இந்த அமைப்பானது செயல்பட்டு வருகிறது. இந்த அமைப்பு கிளை அமைப்பு, மாவட்டம், மாநிலம் என்று 3 கட்டத்திலே இந்த அமைப்பு செயல்படுகிறது. இந்த அமைப்பின் அகில இந்திய அளவில் ஆல் இந்தியா பீப்புள் சயின்ஸ் நெட்வொர்க்கிலும் பிஜிவிஎஸ் பாரத் ஞான் விஞ்ஞான் சமிதி இந்த 2 அமைப்புடன் இணைந்தும் அகில இந்திய அளவில் ஏற்படுகிற பல அறிவியல் மாற்றங்களையும் தமிழில் தாய்மொழியில் வழங்கி கொண்டிருக்கிறது என்பதை மகிழ்ச்சியோடு தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறோம். தற்போது தமிழ்நாடு அறிவியல் இயக்கம் 6 சப்கமிட்டிகளாக பிரிந்து பணியாற்றி வருகிறது. அதன் அடிப்படையில் எஜுகேஷன் சம்பந்தமான ரிசர்ச், டெவலப்மெண்ட் அண்ட் மாடல் ஸ்டடீஸ் இது போன்ற ஒரு கல்வியில ஏற்படுகிற பல புதிய மாற்றங்களையும் வழிவகைகளையும் ஆய்வுகளையும் ஆராய்ச்சிகளையும் தொடர்ந்து செய்து வருகிறது. அதே போல அறிவியல் பிரச்சாரம், சயின்ஸ் கம்யூனிகேஷன் என்ற சப்கமிட்டியில மக்களுக்கு எதிராக ஏற்படுகிற இந்த மூடநம்பிக்கை சம்பந்தமான பல விஷயங்களையும் தினம் ஏற்படுகிற தொழில்நுட்ப மாற்றங்களையும் அது சம்பந்தமான அறிவுகளையும் வழங்கி வருகிறது. அதே போல குழந்தைகள் அவர்களிடத்துல ஆய்வு மனப்பான்மை ஏற்படுத்துகிற NCSE, குயிஸ், சயின்ஸ் டேஸ், அது இதே போல பாப்புலர் சயின்ஸ் லெக்சர்ஸ், இது போல பல நிகழ்வுகளை அறிவியல் பிரச்சாரத்தில் சயின்ஸ் கம்யூனிகேஷன்ல ஒர்க் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம். அதே போல சமம், ஈக்குவாலிட்டி, ஜெண்டர் ஈக்குவாலிட்டியை சொல்கிற ஆண் பெண் சமத்துவத்தில் தமிழ்நாடு அறிவியல் இயக்கம் செயல்பட்டு வருகிறது.
पापा जल्दी से टीवी ऑन कीजिए, टमाटर ले लो, सब्जी ले लो, प्याज ले लो, गन्ना ले लो, गन्ना
Sundar, can you mute all? Sundar, can you mute all?
நன்றி. குழந்தைகளுடைய சத்தங்களும் வந்திருக்கு. அது மாதிரி சமம் என்ற ஒரு விஷயத்தையும் நம்ம பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம். அதே போல சயின்ஸ் பப்ளிகேஷன் தலைப்புல அறிவியல் வெளியீடில் பல நூற்றுக்கணக்கான தலைப்புகள் நாம இன்னைக்கு ஏற்படுகிற அறிவியல் மாற்றங்களை பற்றி தொடர் புத்தகங்களை நாம் எழுதி வருகிறோம். இந்த ஜனவரி 26 கூட நாம் குழந்தைகளோடும் புத்தகத்தோடும் பயணிக்கிற சில விஷயங்கள் நாம் தொடர்ந்து செய்து வருகிறோம். அதுக்கு அடுத்ததாக துளிர் இல்லம் மற்றும் இளைஞர்களுக்கான அறிவியல், அதாவது துளிர் இல்லம்ஸ் அண்ட் சயின்ஸ் கிளப்ஸை நம்ம பண்றோம். அடுத்ததாக வளர்ச்சி, டெவலப்மெண்ட், நிலம், நீர், விவசாயம் குறித்த விஷயங்களை ஆய்வு செய்தல், அந்த மக்களுக்கு ஏற்படுகிற பொருளாதார வாழ்வியல் சூழமான ஆய்வுகளை தொடர்ந்து செய்தல், இது போல பல விஷயங்களை தமிழ்நாடு சயின்ஸ் ஃபாரம் செய்து வருகிறோம். ஆகவே நண்பர்களே, இந்த தமிழ்நாடு சயின்ஸ் ஃபாரம் சயின்ஸ் ஃபார் தி பீப்புள், சயின்ஸ் ஃபார் தி நேஷன் என்ற ஒரு உயரிய நோக்கத்துடன் தொடர்ந்து செயல்பட்டு வருகிறோம். இந்த PSL போன்ற நிகழ்வு மூலமாக உங்கள் அனைவரும் சந்திப்பதில் மீண்டும் ஒரு முறை வாழ்த்து தெரிவித்துக் கொண்டு வாய்ப்பளித்த அனைவருக்கும் நன்றி தெரிவித்துக் கொண்டு விடைபெறுகிறோம். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Meera Nanda. Professor Meera Nanda is an eminent historian of science, and she's been very influential in her critique of post-colonialism, postmodernism on science, and the influence of Hindutva on science. Uh, she has a PhD in biotechnology from the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and a PhD in science studies from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And she was a John Templeton Foundation Fellow in Religion and Science, and a fellow at the Jawaharlal Nehru Institute of Advanced Study, JNU, and has been at the IISER Mohali and now is a visiting professor at IISER Pune. Her writings on pseudoscience and on Vedic science, postmodernism, these have been very important and influential and generated a lot of discussion in the country. And it's a pleasure to welcome her to speak in our Popular Science Lecture series. Over to Professor Meera Nanda. We're all eagerly looking forward to listening to you. Meera, I should unmute.
Am I okay? Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good evening to all the friends in India from a very, very cold, exceptionally cold early morning here in Connecticut. Thanks very much for inviting me. I just want to make one small correction. I am no longer teaching in IISER Pune. I was there till 2020, and then once the virus hit, it was, it wouldn't work for me. I was all alone, you know. So in any case, because my family is here in the US, I decided to retire from teaching. And now I'm working full time on a book, and I'm no longer an active educator. I miss India a lot, but life, you know, has its own plans for you. So let me, in fact, yeah, this may be a good point to give you some context of the paper I'm going to read today. Let me put it in some context. As I said, I'm working on a book which I'm provisionally calling Captured by the Vedas, Science and Hinduism. And when I got the invitation to speak on this forum, I was hoping that I'll have a chapter ready, the first chapter ready, and I'll share with you, you know, the initial draft. But the chapter is nowhere fully done. So what I'm going to do is give you the outline of the argument that I'm going to make in the opening chapter of this book. So I call it A-Sathyameva Jayate in post-truth India. So an obvious place to begin the discussion would be to answer the question, what is post-truth? It figures right there in my title of this talk. So let me explain what I mean by post-truth. As you probably know, the Oxford English Dictionary chose post-truth as the word of the year in 2016. Post-truth does not literally mean an era after truth, in the sense that truth is dead or the truth is no more. No, even in a post-truth era, true statements of verifiable facts continue to exist. It is still true that 2 and 2 make 4, that Trump lost the 2020 elections, that Indian Constitution promises equal rights to all citizens regardless of their faith. They are still true, even though we are living in an era where truths don't matter. So what happens in post-truth era? What happens is that the objective truths cease to matter to what people choose to believe in. The respect for facticity of facts backed by evidence is replaced by evidence-free alternative facts or unverifiable myths taken as facts, or by plain misinformation and conspiracy theories, all meant to appeal to political interests, group identities, and passions unleashed by religious and nationalistic movements. Now, there is a whole bunch of debate. There are books being written on post-truth, whole bunch of debates. What has caused this collapse of truth? I mean, truth exists, but nobody gives a damn. So what's happening? There are many theories, and I'm not going to go into that, but at least in advanced liberal democracies like the US, it is really a breakdown of trust in the system. I mean, if you really think everybody is lying from top to bottom, that politicians' job description is to lie to you, that Congress and Senate are out there to take care of their own interests or the interests of the big companies. Scientists are into just career making, and if you really believe that nobody is telling you the truth, then you might as well believe what suits your interests. To hell with truth. And that seems to really be what has happened in the US. It's a post-truth is a symptom of a breakdown of trust. And of course, there are the social media, everybody is in their own cocoons, nobody wants to listen to an opposing point of view. So truth is breaking down. Factual, again, to back up what I said, it's not that facts don't exist, they exist, but they cease to matter. They are not relevant anymore to the public discourse. Now, I'm going to propose to you that there are two routes, two modes of thinking that lead to post-truth, the post-truth condition. Let's call the first route the big lie, and the second route the deep lie. The big lie results in fakery, and deep lie results in deep fakery. The fakery of the big lie is relatively easy to debunk by due diligence using accepted rules of evidence and logic. The deep fakery of the deep lie is not that easy to debunk because deep fakers don't play by ordinary rules of logic and evidence. They substitute the basic rules of how we know with their own alternative ways of knowing. Big lies depend upon spinning and shading evidence, while deep lie changes the rules of evidence, changes the rules of what counts as evidence. Now, I'm going to further propose to you that the big lie is the dominant mode of post-truth in decaying democracies like in the United States and the United Kingdom, while the deep lie is the dominant mode of post-truth in a decaying democracy like India, where religious nationalism has become the chief driving force of public discourse. My focus in this talk will be on the state-backed deep lie that is tightening its grip on India. But though I will be talking more about the second, the more dangerous, the more hard to debunk kind of lies, which I am calling deep lie. And we'll look at how it works in India. So that will be my focus, but that does not mean that the ordinary kind of big lies are absent in India. India has its shares of the big lie. What do I mean by big lie? The biggest example, almost the paradigm case of the big lie is Trump's big lie that he won the 2020 elections. Okay. There is not an iota of evidence that he won the elections and Joe Biden's victory was based on fraud, voter fraud. And yet 1/3 of American adults believe in this big lie. And many of them acted upon it when they stormed the US Capitol in January 6th of last year. So this is how big lies work. Trump would go and say something totally scandalous, outlandish, a blatant lie, but it'll get repeated, it'll get picked up on social media, and it'll become a lie. It'll develop a life of its own. That's how big lies work. And to come back to India, what I'm saying is India also has has its share of these kind of big lies. Let me give you some examples. The big lie that Muslims will replace Hindus as the dominant group because they're growing at a faster rate. The big lie of love jihad and land jihad. The big lie that Modi's lockdown saved India and indeed the whole world from COVID-19. The big lie that demonetization rooted out corruption. These are dangerous lies that have taken hold of the public sphere in India, and some of them have potentially genocidal consequences. Such lies are dangerous to be sure, but they are relatively transparent. They can be easily fact-checked and challenged. It's a whole different matter whether all the fact-checking helps, because you can fact-check till cows come home, and yet big lies continue to be circulated and believed in. But as I said, the more dangerous are the deep lies, which simply erase any distinction between myth and history and between myth and science. These kind of lies pretend to be scientific, but the evidence for them is simply invented based upon faith and justified by invoking Indian knowledge traditions, which are supposed to have their own unique mode of ascertaining truth. Unlike the big lie, which simply disregards evidence, the deep lie relativizes the standards of evidence to Hindu ways of thinking. This is the standard operating procedure of all religious fundamentalists. And I like to argue that Hindutva has now formally graduated from an ethno-religious movement to a state-sponsored fundamentalist movement at par with Christian and Islamic fundamentalists who hold their holy books as factually true accounts of history and nature. Now, this point, what I'm saying, to paraphrase my own paper, is that Hindu nationalism is now, in my opinion, can be called a religious fundamentalist movement. Now, why is this important? Earlier on, when the saffron wave just started to pick up steam, that's like when agitation over Ayodhya was going on. Hindu nationalists, all the saffron intellectuals used to react vehemently that we are not fundamentalists. The idea was that Hindus just simply cannot be fundamentalists because fundamentalism is a disease of people with the book, of Christians and Muslims, because they have a book whose fundamentals they are defending. The argument was that Hinduism is it has multiple books, it has no one sacred book. So by definition, Hindus cannot be fundamentalists. In fact, some of you may remember, or maybe not, there was a big debate in social sciences itself about the nature of religious fundamentalism. Around year 2000, a major initiative in the US, a 5-volume work on fundamentalism was produced. It was called the Fundamentalism Project. A very, very important set of volumes came out of it. And the scholars, you don't need to know the names unless we can talk about it later. Basically, they said the two features of fundamentalism are fundamentalist movements all around the world. They started with Protestantism and Islam, but it's a worldwide movement. The two features were that fundamentalists are reactive. They are reacting to secularization and modernization of their societies, and they hold their sacred books to be inerrant, without flaws, factually true, down to the letter. These were the two major features of any movement that could be called fundamentalist. And even at that time, scholars also, India used to be the exception. Fundamentalists, yeah, Christian, Islam, we could explain. But the idea was that Hindu movements are somewhat different. They're ethno-national. They're trying to link the Indian identity with Hinduism, but they're not defending a book because they don't have books. I am proposing that movement of doubt has passed. Yes, we have 30,000 gods, 3 million gods, and God knows how many sacred books. But today, and I will describe it, the Hindu organizations, completely backed by the Indian government, have come down to selecting certain number of books, which include, of course, the Vedas, the epics, Ramayana and Bhagavad Gita, a whole number of Purans, not just the 18 major Purans, but 116 Purans as their sacred books. And the new turn in Hindutva movement is that these texts are now being openly defended as factual truths. Okay, that is the new development in Hindu nationalism that I call the deep lie, and I'll explain how that deep lie works. So again, what I'm trying to say is there is a new development in the Hindu nationalist way of operating, way of thinking, and which is leading to a post-truth era, which I call a era of deep lie. A-Satyameva Jayate. I think India should hide that motto of ours, where Satyameva Jayate. We are now at a stage where untruth only wins. All right, so let me read again from prepared text. There are two additional factors which make the deep lie of the Indic variety more dangerous than the big lie of the Trump variety. One, it is backed by the state. Yes, the Republican Party colluded with Trump in propagating the big lie, but the US Department of Education did not start offering courses in Trumpian ways of thinking. In India, the entire ministries of education and culture and various councils for historical and social science research are busy setting up centers for Indian knowledge systems in elite universities, in elite institutions like the IITs. Secondly, this mania for rediscovering Indian ways of knowing is backed by decades of writing by globally renowned Indian and Indian origin intellectuals who have argued that modern science and the entire tradition of the Enlightenment is Eurocentric, Orientalist, and colonial. The self-proclaimed intellectual Kshatriyas, I'll come to them soon, intellectual Kshatriyas of the Hindu nationalism have now taken this post-colonial project of decolonizing knowledge. Post-truth in India is a gift of post-colonial theory. If all this talk of lies, big lies, and deep lies sounds too abstract, let us look at an example that you are all familiar with, the IIT Kharagpur calendar. I want to focus your attention on two features of this notorious piece of propaganda. One, its proclaimed purpose. Its second, its methodology. Okay. This calendar was supposed to celebrate the inauguration of Center for Excellence for Indian Knowledge Systems on IIT Kharagpur campus. The opening page declares its purpose as recovery of the foundations of Indian knowledge systems. If you look at the first page, that's it proudly declares itself that it is going to recover the foundations of Indian knowledge systems. And the last page goes on to describe the courses in Hindu knowledge systems that will be offered. And these courses include, all the 6 schools of Hindu philosophy, the sciences of Jyotish, Vastu, Ayurveda that will be offered. Okay. Many questions come to mind. What is the relevance of such knowledge systems for engineering students? Even if they say, okay, not for these courses are going to be taught in HSS departments, humanities departments, then one has to ask, will the humanities and social sciences in IITs and soon enough IISERs as well be decolonized so that young minds can be inducted into the secrets of the Vedas, which is one of the purpose stated purpose of this particular center. Courses in Indian knowledge systems are not limited to Kharagpur IIT. Let's remember that. I mean, we are talking of this calendar, but it is much bigger than IIT Kharagpur. There is a big push for IKS, Indian knowledge systems, in the new education policy. Textbooks are being written, research fellowships are flowing, and a whole bunch of colleges, universities are jumping on the bandwagon of introducing these courses. Now, I want to suggest to you that there is a larger purpose that the recovery of the foundations of Indian knowledge systems is supposed to serve. The paradigm of IKS justifies the methodology for interpreting myths as facts and for subordinating objective, testable knowledge to the infallible spiritual truths of the Vedas and Puranas. Introduction of Indian knowledge systems is literally a paradigm shift which will allow deep lies to pass as scientific facts, backed by evidence which is justified by Hindu ways of knowing. Take, for example, the methodology deployed in the calendar. The iconic unicorn seals of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were interpreted as actually representing not an animal, but a rishi from Ramayana, Shringa Rishi, a rishi born with horns who conducted the yagna from which God Ram was born. And this becomes evidence that the Indus Valley civilization was actually a Vedic civilization. So you read this and you scratch your head and you ask, what is the connection? On what basis this myth is being read into an archaeological artifact? You challenge them that there is no factual basis either for the existence of Rishi Shringa or that the animal on the seal is representation of this Rishi. You would be told, and influential proponents of Indian knowledge systems, including some left-oriented scholars like Vinay Lal and Ashish Nandi, actually argue that. They argue that the distinction between myths and actual historical facts is an obsession of Western historiography, which owes its origins to ancient Greek historians like Herodotus and Thucydides, who rejected Homeric myths for eyewitness accounts. You will be told that making distinctions between myth and history is an obsession of Judeo-Christian religions, which believe that God acts in human history, and that to know God, you have to study the actual factual record of history. The point is that the distinction between myth and history is a Western way of drawing distinctions. It doesn't apply to us in India. Why doesn't it apply to us in India? You'll be told that Hindu tradition has never made such distinctions between mere stories and factually true stories. In Hindu knowledge traditions, fables involving supernatural actors have always served as the purpose of explanation of natural and social events. So, from the point of view of Indian knowledge traditions, it is perfectly legitimate to use myth as evidence for a factual claim about history. You see, this is how the standards of evidence get relativized to the philosophical, religious paradigm. What applies to, because modern science was born in Europe, it applies, its validity holds only for the Judeo-Christian background assumptions that the Christians make about nature, God, and how God acts. They do not apply to India because our conception of nature and God are different. This is what I mean, that the state sponsorship of Indian knowledge systems is changing the ground rules for how we know what we claim to know. In this new paradigm, Shastras, Puranas, and epics are evidence. The IIT calendar is only the tip of the iceberg. The idea that Hindu civilization is thousands, if not millions of years old, and that if the events described in Hindu sacred texts are real, and the task of historians is to prove their factuality by correlating myths with living traditions and archaeological evidence, is the operating principle of the Indian Council of Historical Research, which is currently completely taken over by the RSS. As the Minister of Culture, a doctor by the name of Mahesh Sharma put it, I worship Ramayana, and I think it is a historical document. People who think it is fiction are absolutely wrong. And here one can spot a sense of envy with Christians and Muslims, for the minister goes on to say, if the Quran and Bible are considered a part of history, then what is the problem in accepting our Hindu religious texts as history of India? So they're obviously doing what the Quran fundamentalists have always done, declaring their sacred texts to be factual record of history. So the top ministers of the government are now primed to do what creationists among the Bible believers have always done, assume the inerrancy of sacred books and interpret scientific theories or archaeological evidence to support what the good books say. The project of writing Bharatiya history using Bharatiya ways of knowing, in fact, has become the operational project of Akhil Bharatiya Itihas Sankalan Yojana, an RSS outfit which has this is an old RSS outfit, but the current ICHR, the Indian Council of Historical Research, the secretary of the ICHR was a regional karyakarta of this Akhil Bharatiya Itihas Sankalan Yojana. This organization sets up local branches in different states with the objective of correlating local gods, local castes and tribes, their myths and rituals and oral customs with the Rishi Munis and stories mentioned in the local Puranas, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. In a detailed ethnography, a French scholar by the name of Daniela Berti describes how the local devtas in Kullu is a region in Himachal Pradesh, local devtas of Kullu are given genealogies going back to the gods. A local shrine of Shringa is traced to Shringa Rishi, the same Shringa Rishi that figured in the calendar, Shringa Rishi of Ramayana. Another local devta called Balu Nag is correlated with Shesh Nag, on which Vishnu rests at the beginning of creation. Similar projects are going on in Odisha and Karnataka. The idea is to incorporate the local people in the national Aryan narrative, that they're all descendants of the great Aryan people who created everything. Institutionalization of Indian knowledge systems has serious implications both for the history of science as an academic field and what will be presented to the public as glorious scientific achievements of ancient India. The ICHR is drawing Sanskritists who are loyal to the Hindutva cause to comb through the Vedic corpus to find scientific nuggets. So we are bound to hear more stories of stem cells, genetic engineering, and aircrafts and things like that. More troubling is the justification of yogic seeing, what is in Hindu philosophy called Shabda Praman. The orthodox school of Vedic interpretation, the school called Mimamsa, holds that the 4 Vedas are eternal, that they were revealed at the beginning of time and space. The Vedas are not only eternal, but completely free from any error. It is simply impossible for the Vedas to be wrong, to be in error, because they are not created by human beings. Rather, the Vedas were heard and seen by the rishis in an altered state of consciousness, which they cultivated through tapasya and sadhana, through meditation. Because Vedas are eternal and eternally true, all 6 orthodox schools of Hindu philosophy, which will be taught in places like IIT, Kharagpur, all 6 orthodox schools of Indian philosophy, and even in Indian empirical sciences like Ayurveda, admit Vedas and later ideas that are not in conflict with the Vedas as praman, as evidence. All orthodox schools of Hindu ways of knowing admit Vedas to be the ultimate, no questions asked, Vedas are praman. Okay, cite a shloka from the Vedas, and that overrules any other kind of evidence you may have if it contradicts the meaning of the shloka. Now, what is happening is one can see a neo-Mimamsa style defense of Shabda Praman is emerging amongst the intellectuals who go under the banner of Swadeshi Indology, whose chief proponent currently is Rajiv Malhotra, and his US-based Infinity Foundation, which is now set up branches in India as well. Malhotra lays out a new age-ish defense of the eternity and infallibility of the Vedas in his most recent work, especially his latest called Sanskrit Non-Translatables. He says that the cosmos is made up of primordial vibrations. The objects we perceive through our senses are tangible form that these vibrations take. And the Vedic, so world is made up of primordial vibrations. Objects are solidified vibrations, embodied vibrations. All right, and Sanskrit is the most exact scientific knowledge, most exact and scientific language, because its sounds and grammars capture these vibrations. And Vedas are eternally true because the Vedic seers are actually the most exalted scientists, because they receive these vibrations in their altered state of minds. Therefore, Vedas are nothing but an objective, error-free account of cosmic reality. What Mimamsa used to, Mimamsic philosophers would say, talk about sadhana and this and that. The new Mimamsics are putting it in terms of, fancy terms of vibrations, and they turn Vedic seers into almost like, people with antennas on their heads who are just capturing these vibrations, pouring straight into their heads. So to think that you really think that all of this stuff that is coming out of intellectuals like Rajiv Malhotra will not make it into the textbooks of IKS that are being written for places like IITs. This is the stuff out of which Vedic science will be defended. I want to wrap up by giving an overview of how Hindu nationalism has come to this point where it is openly defending the inerrancy, how Hindu nationalism has taken this fundamentalist turn. How has it come about? If you read the Hindutva literature going back to the Ram Janmabhoomi time, early 90s and onwards, you hear a great lament amongst the saffron circles that they say that, oh my God, we have only ideologues, we don't have real intellectuals. And there are many calls by people like David Frawley, Colonel Els, Rajaram, N.S. Rajaram, Subhash Kak, all these stalwarts of Hindu nationalists are writing books, Arise Arjuna, they're writing impassioned articles about how we need a class of intellectual Kshatriyas who can defend the Brahmins. That was traditionally the job of Kshatriyas, to defend the Brahminical civilization. So where are our Kshatriyas? That is the demand. Hindutva has now found its intellectual Kshatriyas, who are now finding a welcome home in elite institutions and state decision-making bodies. What explains the rise? What happened? How did they manage to get these intellectual Kshatriyas all lined up? Some of it is just, power of the state. From 2014, the state is under the control of the Hindu right, and that helps. All the institutions are captured, and they get their. But it is not just the material factors. And, one can also say, okay, globalization, the internet, and a whole bunch of constituencies have been created because they're of online Hindutva. But material factors alone cannot explain this new development in Kshatriyahood. It is my hypothesis that the post-colonial condemnation of modern science and of secular modernity and the Enlightenment rationalist tradition as Western and colonial provided the opening that the Saffron Brigade needed. If you read the writings of major intellectual Kshatriyas like Colonel Delst, Bala Gangadhara, and Rajiv Malhotra, they invariably start with the premise that modern science and its worldview is a Western Judeo-Christian way of knowing, which has falsely proclaimed itself to be universally valid. And so Western claims of objectivity are really parochial Western claims upheld by the political and military power the West has. This has been the post-colonial theory's basic premise. And post-colonial theory it occupies a very prominent space in social sciences, especially in a country like America, where multiculturalism is the rule of the order. It's really a dominant perspective. So post-colonial theory basically condemns all of social science as being based upon power of the colonial of Western history backed by colonial power. And it starts with the postmodern assumption that there can be no objective knowledge because knowledge itself is construct of power. So post-colonial theory builds upon it, and nearly all the major theorists of post-colonial theory are either based in India or are Indian origin. Maybe we can discuss this later, but my point is the new intellectual Kshatriyas take post-colonial theory as their starting point. They assume the truth of post-colonial theory and then take it in a Hindu direction. So once they assume the truth of post-colonial theory, the next step is a non-brainer. If all science is simply colonial consciousness, as Bal Gangadhar insists, then to be truly decolonized, India needs its own sciences, its own ways of knowing, its own universals. That is how India will become the Jagat Guru, and that is the aim of these intellectual Kshatriyas. In fact, I was just rereading a very, very irritating book by Colonel Delst, in which it's called Decolonizing the Hindu Mind, came out in, 1990s. And it's really a conversation amongst saffron groups. They're talking to each other, sort of. So no holds barred. And Elst is a Belgian anti-Islamic radical. I mean, he's, in my opinion, a fascist. So this man, so this book is about, they're wondering what to call ourselves. There is a saffron upsurge, but what name applies to it? What should we call ourselves? Are we communalists? Are we anti-secularists? Are we anti-modernists? Who are we? So Elst goes through all these various names, and basically says, let's call ourselves the latest chapter of post-colonial theory, because that's what we are. We are objecting to the Western nature of scientific knowledge, of social sciences and natural sciences. They don't go so much after natural science because they need, then after all, when they defend Vedic sciences as scientific, they are defending them in terms of modern science. Quantum mechanics is present in Advaita, that kind of a thing. But insofar as social sciences are concerned, they, everything, it's social scientific work on working of the caste system, working on, patriarchy, caste, whole social scientists through anthropology, through social scientific quantitative research have tried to take a grip on contemporary Indian society. All of that is rejected as just colonial consciousness. Caste exists only in the minds of the colonial powers. Those British who came here couldn't make sense of it. So they decided that there is caste in India. Caste is a social construct. So these kind of, so my point is, post-colonial theory, which was meant with, it got trapped in the discourse of postmodernism and skepticism towards meta-narratives of science. But they were trying to, I don't know what they were trying. Did they not see that if you demolish, rationalism, the vacuum will be filled up by all kind of radical ideas? But that is what has happened. It is my contention that post-colonial theory has opened the door for a new brand of intellectual Kshatriyas who have taken a fundamentalist turn in India. And things are going to get much worse before they get better. And so, yeah, it's a sad time for India. It's a very dangerous time for India, and of course for the US, which is, I happen to be in a very unfortunate position that both the countries that I belong to are sliding downhill so rapidly. And anyways, that's what the world is like. We can observe, think critically about it, but some problems are way bigger than anyone's control. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you, and we are, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Professor. Over to
Sam,
Jane.
there is a technical issue
Yeah.
that no one is able to chat, enter their question in the chat box. So
Oh,
what
really?
I'm suggesting is those who are raising the hands alone will be allowed to speak, let them speak directly. We will allow one by one if they are interested to talk to the speaker. I don't know what's going on, and something has happened, and yes, okay. And if I would expect the audience to ask question directly related to the subject that she is talking, and let us not go into the go beyond the topic which she is talking. Otherwise, it will end up with going to somewhere else. So better to stick on to the
Vijay,
Yeah.
if the question goes beyond what is required, I think you should stop it, unmute it immediately and proceed with the next question. That's better.
fine. Okay.
Because it should not go out of bow. Okay. So
Okay.
I will start with the question.
Yeah.
Madam. It was an excellent talk. I enjoyed. But of course, your focus was science in a true sense, that both social and natural sciences are together. And then the conceptual framework involving the science as a whole. And naturally, science being universal, there are some questions which people will ask from what has been done in the past from their own regions, with some kind of a regionalism that will develop it. Now, in some sense, since I've been a mathematics and physics background, I did follow some of the works in the early period, particularly in the 1,000 years back, something like Bhaskara's work or Kerala School of Mathematics, etc. There are certain interesting achievements which were there, particularly by Brahmagupta, Bhaskara, and Madhva, and the Nilakanta, and others are there. In some sense, even internationally, these are getting recognized by the science people themselves. In fact, they are getting recognized. For example, there's one famous equation which was called Pell's equation in mathematics. It was actually given by Brahmagupta about 1,000 years back. And now the American Mathematical Society and International Mathematical Society has started calling it as Brahmagupta-Pell equation, which is actually interesting. So in some sense, is it not our duty to recognize some focused achievements which were there and try to make sure that we do not degrade any of them, and we ought to want to tell that these are all great achievements of that period. So would you like to comment on it? Because the Kharagpur IIT, this calendar tries to say something, but most of the time they talk only junk. But somebody somebody will pick up something from Kerala school or Brahmagupta or Bhaskara and then project it as a substantiation of the whole thing which they are giving. That is the problem.
No, I really think serious historians of science, and there have been some really remarkable books being written by trained historians of science who absolutely recognize the innovations that were brought in by Indian astronomers.
Yes.
The problem is Indian astronomy did not, it remained caught in a conflict between Siddhanta and Puranas. The big claims are made about developments in Indian astronomy, which are false, in the sense that it is presented as if Brahmagupta and Bhaskara were at the verge of heliocentrism, of discovering sun-centered universe, which is not true. But their mathematical contributions have been recognized and must be separated from the bigger claims that Copernicus was known to our astronomers. What happens is, in the zeal to promote scientificity of ancient Hindus, these distinctions are not made. And then it becomes, then you rule out even valid developments in mathematics. But I do believe that academically trained historians of science are beginning to, and I've always actually admired the mathematical innovations of Indian astronomers, because mathematics developed in India as an adjunct to astronomy. And so again, the debates between Puranic, there's a whole bunch of even the best of Indian astronomers, Bhaskar, Bhaskaracharya of when was it, 8th, 9th century AD?
1100.
Lalla.
1100.
They came around the turn of the first millennium.
Yeah.
Even the best of them who had tried to move away from the Puran. Remember what in Indian astronomy, Puranic Hindu view of the cosmos was a flat earth with Mount Meru, with the stars and planets going around Mount Meru. They made a radical, the Siddhantic astronomy was a radical challenge to Puranas, and they accepted the Greek view of a spherical universe in which the earth was at the center. But even the best of them, from Aryabhatta, from Lalla, from Bhaskara, they could not break free from certain Puranic ideas. They did not say there is no Mount Meru. Mount Meru was made a sort of internal to Earth itself. So they made compromises with the Puranas, and so astronomy could never break free from religious ideas, even when mathematics was at its most advanced stage. And again, the contributions of Nilakantha was to insist upon revising the parameters of astronomical calculations by observation. Observation was not, Indian astronomers were not observers of the skies. This is not, the observational records are not there. They were making mathematical adjustments in order to predict the future. My point I'm trying to make is, while we must admire and accept the mathematical advances, because they are tied up with the whole the other issues of astronomy not breaking free from the religious Puranic influences, what happens is, if you admire the mathematics, you end up giving a free pass to the problems of ancient Indian astronomy. And I agree that historians must recognize the contributions, mathematical contributions, but at the same time remain critical of the claims that Indian astronomy was Copernican before Copernicus came. So those distinctions, it has to require a lot of careful sorting out, which doesn't happen in India very. I tried when I was teaching history of science to give due credit where credit belongs. You have to do it. And if secularists don't do that, they are being dishonest. Just because they don't like Hindutva, you can't hide our real contributions if there are any. So I mean, I agree with you in principle. I was just elaborating the relationship between mathematics and astronomy.
Thank you, ma'am. I like to Dr. Vinita Gowda to speak
hi,
to.
can you hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Meera, for the talk. It's really quite. I'm new in this discourse, so it takes me a while to understand the nuances. I'm a botanist at IISER Bhopal. So one of the I'm going to connect how what I'm grappling with right now. So in basic sciences, we are trying to address this question of colonialism, right? And how colonialism has influenced our sciences, which is true. I can see it every day when I work on it. And so therefore there has been a drive, not only internally from people like me, to address it and say that how we want to disassociate or identify this colonialism that exists even now in sciences in India. And it has also been recognized internationally from people in the US and UK. And I just realized while listening to you that when we say, or when I say that I want to address this question of colonialism, I am not really talking about getting rid of evidence-based science. I'm talking about colonialism as a social construct that has affected how we do science, and how when it comes to publications, when it comes to money, how racism is seen here, etc. So is this, I mean, how do we get out of this circle? Because I don't want to not talk about colonialism, and because I may be misinterpreted by someone locally as saying that I'm talking about medicinal plants because they're medicinal and written in some Veda. Yes, I do think that's a good starting point, but we also think that it should still be evidence-based, as in I still have to show that the chemical has some efficacy in treating something, right? So how do I get out of this thing of not getting misinterpreted,
Yeah, I absolutely see your point, but I mean, it's a very, very important question. So I want to know a little bit more. When you say that we are still, the colonialism is, we are 75 years into independence. We have set up, I mean, you are working at IISER. I mean, we have set up, we are trying to cultivate our own institutions. So give me some more details of how you see colonial project. I mean, why do you say colonialism is still a force?
So the reason that the force is because, let's say I'm a botanist. For any plant collection that I need to, we look at history of evolution of plants, and all the collections are sitting somewhere outside of India because of our colonial history. So even when we say that we want to now have the collections in India, of course, the counter to that is that we want the collections here, but we are not willing to invest the same amount of scientific rigor in maintaining those collections. You
Right.
see, so it's not enough for me to say that I want all the collections to come from Kew or Edinburgh or some other larger herbarium. I'm also saying that I want it here and I want it to be maintained in the same status as what it is there. What people hear from me is that, oh, we need to get it back. And that's where they stop listening to what I seem to what I'm trying to tell. And so therefore my science is affected because I need to collaborate outside. Then there is, of course, when I see collaborators from outside, unless they know me, they assume that because I'm from India, my English will be bad, that my science is bad, because there aren't many people who do work like I do, and so they're sort of already biased against our science. So when we publish, it's not double-blind publication, so all of these things affect. So our research doesn't get in. So I have strongly been advocating for the last couple of years now, saying this has to stop. Even if the quality is bad, the West has to listen to us, because we need a chance and we're already behind. So that's where I'm coming from when I talk about colonialism. But when I talk colonialism from this perspective, I now realize that, and of course I'm a plant biologist and I study medicinal plants and all that. And then often I get called on to talk about medicinal plants and how Ayurvedic and things work. So I always have to say, I am not that kind of a botanist. I need to still see evidence. I work on gingers, but I haven't put the ginger oil in something and shown that the animal lives longer. There needs to be evidence there, and I haven't seen it. So therefore, yes, plants have medicines, but I don't know where they are. I think it's a very tricky sort of line that I'm always walking. And I find it very difficult. And of course, I recently thought that this, and like I said, even in the West, this idea of that colonialism has affected sciences in developing countries and underdeveloped countries is very, luckily, very clear now. And we talk about it in larger meetings as well. But I don't want it to be misinterpreted like what you were talking about,
No, when it comes to the political economy and institutional structures, there was an imbalance and continues to be an imbalance between, us ex-colonials, post-colonials, and our erstwhile masters. There is no denying that.
Yeah.
But if epistemological lessons, how we know are,
yes.
That is a whole different ballgame, and you are not going there and I'm not going there. That doesn't mean that we should be blind to institutional imbalances. But when it comes to institutional imbalances, I think part of what you are calling colonial and is generally understood as, because, the origins of it are maybe in colonial times, because they took these plants and cultivated. All that is true, but I think we should take responsibility for our own. After all, we have the resources now, and let's be clear, science is a blue-eyed child of the Indian government, even the Hindutva government. We are scientists in India are a very privileged group of people. They have the resources. I've worked in 2 IISERs. I know how privileged.
Absolutely.
So it's not the lack of resources. When you say that we don't have facilities to really maintain them, why don't we? When you say our research is half-baked and the West doesn't take us seriously, why the hell is it still half-baked?
Absolutely.
And yes, I've lived in the US for, God, I've been here forever, 35 years now. My point is, yes, there are prejudices, but when it comes to expertise, when at least the US, Britain might still have its Sahib mentality, but US economy, US institutions run on talent from India.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
they are embraced. They are given, special visas to come in. And so I think we need to take care of our own house back in India. And
Absolutely.
there's no
Absolutely.
reason why we cannot have herbariums. Why we cannot? We are sitting right there, and plants don't die because colonials took a sapling.
Absolutely.
Plants. So
Absolutely.
why are we need to? And that is one of my biggest regrets, that we haven't been able to again. I've been out of actual scientific establishment for a very long time, but I see that even Indian scientists don't want to publish in Indian journals because they don't count that much. If we had
Right.
cultivated our own community, maybe we would have been
Absolutely.
able to establish.
Absolutely.
So we remain tied to
Absolutely.
credentials from them, and then we
Right.
get upset that they're not credentialing us.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
So-
it was very nice to hear from you, because I did not see my arguments. I mean, I have heard them getting misinterpreted, and I've on a local basis I've tried to answer, but then I realized by listening to you that how my anti-colonialism, when I'm saying it can be misinterpreted to be me supporting this, non-evidence based.
I share your kind of anti-colonialism. I fully do. My problem is philosophical lessons that are derived from that become, and the very fundamental postmodern argument that there cannot be objective knowledge. It is impossible because all knowledge is power.
Already
that
there.
is where my problem. That kind of colonialism I have deep disagreements with.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for this very thought-provoking talk.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, madam. Next questioner is Senthil Kumar. Senthil, you can ask the question. Senthil, you can unmute the mic and ask the question. Yes.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Ma'am, it was a very fascinating talk, actually, what we have given. Basically telling the big lies and the deep lies, actually. And ma'am, I have read your book also, the God Market, actually. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Very quite interesting book, and where you have also told that the less secure societies are more religious, and you have told how India is more religious, and US is also more religious than Europe. Okay,
right.
So I think that was a very good book. And here, when you are telling about the big lies and as well as the deep lies, the big lies seems to be at least contained now. Now, Trump being out of power, at least there are some corrective steps US have taken. But in India now, this deep lies is on the ascent, actually, and we are seeing increasingly, and there is no counter narrative to that. Now, how do you counter these kind of deep lies? Actually, now like we don't have any clue, or the opposition doesn't have any clue. They don't have any big narrative or counter narrative to these big lies, these deep lies. So what do you think? Like, how do we counter this? That's my question.
Let me take the US issue first, and then we'll look at India. Trump is gone, well, for now, but I don't think Trumpism is contained. I don't think that is the big lie. The big lie has taken a life of its own, and I mean, a huge number of US state-level states have passed anti-voter registration laws, anti-voting laws. It is totally based upon Trump's big lie that there is a lot of voter fraud. That's why he lost, and that's why Joe Biden won. So that lie is still continuing. The whole, the Trumpites listen only to right-wing radio, only go to right-wing sites. That kind of a thing is still going on. So America remains pretty much in the grip of this situation where objective truths, verifiable truths just don't matter. You believe what you want to believe in, because America is really facing a crisis of trust in social institutions because of many years of, high level corruption, high level collusion between corporations and the Congress, people's needs being totally unmet. There is a breakdown of trust. I mean, this idea that nobody is taking care of the national interest. Everybody is in it for their own gain. That has become very widespread. The kind of despair over there is nobody, the country is not working properly. So when I really think that when you come to that point that you think everybody is lying, then you choose the lie you want to believe in, because at least you are happy. So America, the post-truth crisis did not end with Trump. It is ongoing. In India, I share your worry about the lack of a counter narrative. I mean, I really, when it comes to political historians in India, I really believe that they are some excellent historical works. Not so much of history of science. We haven't cultivated that tradition very well. The history of ideas, not so much, but political history, cultural history of India, there is a narrative of multiplicity of people from, variety of genetic, ethnic sources coming, this composite culture. This is very well established with evidence in historical work. The evidence is really, the inscriptions, the cross-cutting manuscripts. If Purana says something, is this also reflected in literature, poetry, essays, or inscriptions, cross-checking of what the ideas were. I think Ramila Thapar's work has been excellent. She reads the Puranas not to say that this is how history happened, but she reads the Puranas to understand what the society was like, which produced the Puranas. And that kind of work exists. There is a rich literature on history, of secular history in India. The problem is it has been so badly trashed, so badly delegitimized as just Marxist, and it's lost it. And I think partly, left had its own problems. They were equally ideologically, there was ideological groupism. So that historical narrative is, it exists, but again, it's like post-truth. It stops mattering. It has stopped to matter. Historical narrative will have to be painfully reconstructed. My approach is to fight it every time the other side raises its head. You have to fight it. You have to keep arguing, case by case. And but yeah, it's going to be, I think it's very, very difficult. And to some extent, if the scientific community has its own set of problems, they have not cultivated, as I was just saying, it's the onus is on Indian scientific community to strengthen their journals, their laboratories, their quality of publications. The same applies to social scientists to a much worse degree. They have remained very much tied to the current fashions in the rest of the world. And I don't think I can even point to some, real social scientists. There are public intellectuals. There are wonderful public intellectuals in India. Prabhat Bhanu Mehta. There are many. But consistent fact-based social science is not all that, you don't find really good scholarship. So I think it'll be I really don't know. I feel very discouraged myself. So.
Right. Ja, you
Yeah,
can.
okay. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Meera. I mean, as always, very inspiring to listen to you. And
Great.
yeah, I wanted to, when I listened to you about the Sanatanizing Science project, and so I also want this dimension that somehow the Hindutva folks or all these people who are into this verifying science project are also into embracing high tech, right?
Right.
They want high tech. You want, to put people on the moon, or almost, all the symptoms of high tech, all the symbols of high tech. And in fact, you want to identify, I would say, only with high tech. You're not
Right.
really interested in low tech. I mean, the claims are always for high tech, and the relationship between science and technology is something that is, shoved under the carpet. In fact, I think blackened completely. And that's a problem, because our entire education system, or even training almost everywhere in India, this relationship is something that's not much, delved in depth. I mean, that's a problem. I mean, our scientists operate as scientists, our technologists operate as technologists, and these kind of, the processes and cultures of practice are not in the public domain, in public debate at all. So it becomes very easy to hijack, products of science into, and make all kinds of claims completely divorced from processes and practice.
Process of thinking that, I know.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I would say that, this is one of the major weaknesses in public perception of science, or public engagement with science, science education. All this plays into the hands of projects of this kind, fundamentally.
Right. I mean, Modi can really claim to be a modernizer because of his support of all these high technology, the Chandrayans, the internet and stuff. But this is uniformly true of all religious movements. In my there is a phrase which I use in some earlier work. It's called reactionary modernism. Where the Enlightenment project of using reason against reason to examine the claims of metaphysics, which is beyond a sensory knowledge, where the claims of the Enlightenment are set aside, but the fruits of the Enlightenment are embraced. That happened in fact, Germany. There is a book called Reactionary Modernism. It's called which is a historical description of how the Third Reich rejected Judeo-Christian tradition, embraced the Aryanism, but was highly technically advanced at the same time. How did the split happen? I think similar trends are visible, and India is not alone. I mean, you think Al-Qaeda can exist without the internet? They are using new technologies very instrumentally. And so that remains true. And my problem is engineering education also. I mean, I don't think I don't think IIT engineers, for example, I did my doctorate in IIT Delhi. I wasn't trained in IIT, but they have a very instrumental view of science. I don't think they care much about its philosophy and its. So yeah, it's a problem infecting all of our education.
Thank you. I think Dr. Murugan had something.
Yeah, Dr. Murugan, you want to? Please unmute. You have to unmute.
Oh, thank you, madam.
Hello.
It's a good talk. I have been enjoying it.
Thank you.
You have been presenting the whole issues from a sociologist point of view. That's what at least I understood.
Socialist point of view?
Sociologist, social scientist point of view.
Social scientist point of view, yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, yes.
It's really interesting to hear something from social scientist point of view about science and its relationships to the society. I have been just thinking about the way when you just presented, I am just thinking about the historical development which at least presented here. First it was modernism, then postmodernism, then post-truth. But then I thought at least two things which is has similar tendencies which I presented in the past history also. One is this similar tendencies which you saw in the Second World War, and also in a similar tendency in the Galileo's time, where there is a conflict between Galileo and the church over the whether the scripture is to be believed or the sense experience to be believed. Does it mean that the post-truth and all such things are present not only in the present society, but it's also present in the older societies, older level, in the past also? I have one more comment also to make. You have been tracing about Trump's adventure. About his election, declaring his election, the election was supposed to be illegal and everything. There is also a positive side. That's what I thought about the whole. Let me just quote within positive side, the whole. The sense here, he was also against COVID vaccination. In the end, what happened was people at USA, there was a lot of movements for COVID vaccination. So what I thought was if necessities arise here, if social circumstances or necessities arise here, this post-truth can also be overcome.
The what can be overcome? Post-truth.
The post-truth, truth can also be overcome. It will be, because if there is a social necessity is there, post-truth will also be overcome. The compelling social necessity should be there. If there is a compelling social necessity, the post-truth will also be overcome.
Right.
That I thought is the interesting lesson, at least I was just seeing from this Trump event.
Right. I mean, Trump with all his, he made fun of COVID as just flu, big deal, don't do anything, etc. But he himself goes and he was one of the first ones to get vaccinated. So yes and no, in my opinion. There remain very strong ideological grounds. I mean, US is only 60% vaccinated. I mean, there are vaccines going waste because people don't want it. Only 60% of US population is vaccinated. So the resistance has many different sources. Some of it is just plain in misinformation and lies and conspiracy theories that somehow some microchips are being injected into you. Bill Gates is going to keep your, control over you, and and it creates, I don't know, it'll lead to death, it'll lead to dementia, it'll lead to all sorts of misinformation. And some of it is just, who the hell is the government to tell me what to do? It's just plain libertarianism, which is very common in the US. So I don't know whether material necessity itself is enough to. Now with Omicron, there are so many hospital beds are filling up again in the US, and 99, majority of those who are dying are unvaccinated people. Material reality did not change their minds till they're on their deathbeds. So, but I think Yeah. About the conflict over truth and how to define truth is not a 21st century phenomena, of course. I mean, but I think that was you can't transport you can't say that the post-truth kind of tendencies existed back then. The whole Galileo's big debate and his prosecution by the church had to do with how to interpret the Bible. I mean, Galileo was a devout Christian. He was a church-going man. All he was saying was that, like, Bible is for its moral truths, not for its physical truths. And the important thing is, in Christianity, right from early Christianity, St. Augustine's time, there was this tendency that separated factual truths from moral truths. There was not a dominant tendency, but it was there. Galileo could use the earlier, church doctrines, which said that Jesus's message is for salvation of the soul, not for explaining this transient material world that's not important. It's for so I think through history, the ideas about truths which can be established through empirical sensory evidence is relatively a recent development. I mean, it came after the scientific revolution, is what established the validity of this way of knowing, which need not involve any metaphysical category, which we cannot, through our human reason, cannot examine. So the scientific truth, the empirically justifiable truth, is a recent development, 17th century, post-Newton. So yeah, I don't think that comparison holds with the earlier times.
What about the second tendencies, similar tendencies in Second World War time?
I'm not that. No, I think the world was very different at that time. I don't think there was so much. I look at post-truth as a symptom of social collapse. It's not. Truth is fine. I mean, science will continue in isolated centers here and there, and it is what's happening. Post-truth is a symptom of a social malaise in which cohesion and level of trust in institutions is gone. Democracies exist in the sense that rituals of democracy exist. You go put a vote in every 4 years. Even that is threatened, at least in America. It could not be. I mean, US was very close to the point where peaceful transition of power was not going to happen. So post-truth is a lack of trust, and that's my understanding. And
I'm not a social scientist,
right.
So I'm just curious to know, because I don't have any such background from them. Since you are presenting it from social scientist point of view, obviously they will have some way of distinguishing all these trends which happened in the historical past and the present conditions. So I'm interested in knowing in what way they are distinguishing those conditions from these conditions, the present day conditions. What kind of criteria or parameters, something they are applying it here.
To a large extent, there's basically the postmodern idea that facts are not representations of a independently existing reality. Okay, what we claim to be facts are not capturing some aspect of independently existing reality. We construct facts out of our ideas in our own head, our personal interests, our gender, our colonial status, whatever. our position in the hierarchy. Facts are constructed, socially constructed. And there is no way you can say that this description is truer than any other description. That is a general, in a nutshell, what postmodern skepticism about truth has been. It looks like that at least in advanced, at least in countries like the United States, where the level of education is fairly high, this kind of skepticism about truth has just spread like a virus in the general public. And combined with that is the badly functioning democracy anyway. The Senate and US politics is totally gridlocked, totally polarized. No laws get passed. Nothing really changes. And people are sick and tired. So this is a combination of America's own internal problems combined with this skepticism, which has been fueled by very advanced intellectuals in America, that has led to this situation that, okay, you can keep on citing true facts till cows come home. Nobody's going to listen. What do you do about it? So I think this is a new development in America. I think that around the Second World War, there was a lot more cohesion. US was actually just emerging as a superpower, if you may call it that. And so there was this strong sense of patriotism and American exceptionalism that we are different. That's gone. I don't think Americans, and I think that is the problem. It's no longer an undisputed exceptional nation, and Americans know it, that their status is, and that leads to its own worries. So, it's US is a very depressing place these days.
What about other similar countries like Europe? Because they are also equally well advanced, developed states here. So
I think things are pretty bad in UK, as far as I can tell, the post-truth issues. But the Northern Europe is, I don't know enough about them to really comment. But they also have anti-vax movements. There are levels of distrust even, and there are rising anger against immigrants even in France, Belgium, Netherlands. Generally, they were open, welcoming societies, but they are becoming more close-minded. So, but yeah, US is at the center, in my opinion, of this post-truth skepticism.
I'm just, don't mistake me, just curious to know, is there all these tendencies were present in the past also, but the degree to which these tendencies present here have changed now? Is it something can be interpreted like that, or this is the way the social scientists are interpreting?
No, that's a good
Not
question.
Like
And look, I mean, certain degree of skepticism and living in your silos is always, in all societies, there are, groups who have distrust, who separate themselves out. But at this, there comes a point, as Marxists like to say, changes in quantity lead to changes in quality. I think this quantitative changes have just, it's a whole new animal now,
Right. Okay, now we have one more questioner. His name is Bharat. Bharat, can you unmute and ask your question? Bharat, it is your turn. I think your mic is not working well. Can you unmute?
Hello, sir. Am I audible now?
Yeah, it's audible. Yeah, you can ask. You can speak.
Hearty wishes, ma'am. Really, the session was very well, ma'am.
Thank you.
We're so happy to see that you're so dedicated. In the first, we saw that you're putting some eye drops for your eyes and starting to speak.
You can see the eye drops?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, my eyes are very bad. I need to take care of them. Yeah.
How do you think that how to make our youngsters more aware or recognize about our rich culture and heritage?
I can't hear you.
Yeah, your voice is not. No, can you adjust your mic or something like that? No. Can you unplug your device, audio device and put it back again?
Or question can be raised in chat.
Yeah, chat is not working. What I can do is I can make you as.
Am I audible now, ma'am? Am I audible now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
How to make our youngsters say, recognize about our rich culture and heritage, ma'am, in spite of all those stupid things which the society and media is keep on insisting them.
I don't understand what we can do to counter it, or I mean, there are great things about India. I mean, we have plenty to be proud of. I mean, there is hardly any society with who has lived in peace with such variety, such differences, you know, of everything from language to food to religions. We have a great heritage of a lesson to the world of how to live together, and that must be absolutely embraced and celebrated. And that is the sadness of Hindutva, that is what they're destroying in the name of some Bharatiya ancient culture. So but is that what you want? I mean, I'm sorry, you'll have to repeat the issue.
Again, it's unmute.
The media and the society is insisting something bad about it, no, ma'am. So
the
media, how can we make?
Can't make out.
I can't make out. Sorry. There's something I can hear you, but I can't follow you.
Oh. The media is insisting about something bad about it, no, ma'am.
Media.
Yeah. Continuously.
No, is this are you suggesting that the Indian media is a problem? Which I agree it is. I mean, but it is getting more aligned with the right wing, with Modi. I don't watch Indian, but there are still, I think, good outlets in India, not on TV, but newspapers. Indian Express is not too bad. The new websites, I think the Wire, the print, they do a good job. So that's, I mean, India is not yet fallen entirely in the clutches of the right wing, and so point is to keep on arguing, keep on fighting.
There is another questioner. His name is Rishikesh. Can you unmute and ask your question?
Hello, ma'am. It was a wonderful talk.
Thank you.
So I had a doubt. So basically, are we headed in some sense with is post-fact a precursor to anarchism, like complete disregard of government structures and, people only holding libertarian values as the ultimate ethics to go by?
It feels like it. I mean, it does. What has happened is epistemology itself. How do we know what are facts? That have become libertarianized, if you may have it. I have my own way of. I'll do my own research. My authorities who I consult say this. Everybody creates their own knowledge cocoon, justified by their own perspective on what makes a fact, a solid fact. So there are these libertarian, I kind of agree with you. It is definitely libertarian way of constructing facts. And anarchy will follow. There is, and it is leading toward, I mean, there are serious debates in America these days that are we heading into a civil war? Because the center doesn't hold. There is nothing connecting us to each other. So we will see which way it goes. But these tendencies are definitely visible. Anarchical, libertarian, don't tread on me as one of their, there was I forget the name of it now. Anyway, it was a symbol of a certain right-wing tendency in America, a coiled snake with the slogan, don't tread on me. So everybody just leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. I know I'll think through things myself. There is this American individualism gone mad. So yeah. Okay. If there isn't, are we ready to
I think we
conclude?
should probably wind up.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the time to wind up, and I invite.
Anyway, I'm available on, you can always contact me on the internet, on the email.
Now, finally, I will ask one question because I am facilitating it. Now, I have a question. That's a continuation of the question raised by Senthil Kumar. So this is with regard to the counter narrative. So how do we build the counter narrative? One is we have a strong media, of course. No, most of them are not providing platform. Still, we have a good chance of expressing our views, but still it's not going to the people. But when you are going to the street and organize the meetings or communicating what it is required, so there are a lot of disturbances and it's not able to go with your views, particularly in northern part of the India. Now, how can we proceed with in such situations? That's a big question that is arising now. Even this virus has spread in southern part as well. So the divergence is totally missing, and it's not the right-wing group is not allowing the others to express their opinion.
Right. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, there's all sorts of physical intimidation, and you'll have police at your doorsteps raiding your house for. So, how do you go? That's one problem of not living in India. I left India last year, and so you lose touch with the ground realities, and it's hard for me to really add to this very important issue of what do we do, where do we go. I'm sorry, you will have more suggestions than I can provide because you are right there. But at the same time, I don't know. I mean, I feel very disheartened also, especially about North India, where I come from, that the spirit of rational critique seems to be just dead. But maybe we are not looking at it in the right places. Maybe, sometimes I wonder this divide we have, religious versus secular. It's not as if religious people are totally devoid of critical reason, They're not. I don't know. I don't know enough about religious people because I'm not part of it. It's just, I'm ignorant. I myself, I have no real answers to this particular question. What do? We do our best.
We need strong people's movements. I mean, we need very strong people's movements.
Yeah, we need to.
I mean, we need movements. I mean, individual action
Right.
All right. So before we wind up, one more answer has been raised. So I ask Suresh Padmanabhan to unmute and ask the question briefly. We need to wind up by 6 o'clock.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Suresh?
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for this lecture. I'd want to have your comments on whether India, whether it exists in this name, or the land parcel exists for a long period of time. Do we need have an knowledge system existing in this land parcel? Okay. So because you said about IKS, okay, Indian knowledge system. So this land parcel, the people, those living for many centuries or millenniums, okay,
Right.
they have an Indian knowledge system or not? The scientific community, people like you, do you believe that this land parcel had some knowledge or not?
Yeah, of course I do. This land parcel, whatever name you want to give it, Bharat is a good enough name. Of course, it had a very well developed knowledge system. I mean, the schools of philosophy, and not just of the Vedic kind. The Buddhists were developing their own philosophical views. I think in the IKS is real. I'm not denying that. IKS, in fact, India, post-Vedic schools of philosophy that developed, the 6 schools, the Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Yoga, Sankhya, Vedant.
Yeah.
And of course, the much abused and Charvaks, which were just written off of these 6 schools are very serious debates about how do we know, what is the evidence. Each school takes this issue of praman very seriously. What is the praman? How do we know? And these are, all of them were deeply, except for Buddhism and Charvaks, the Lokayats, the influence of the Vedantic notion that Atma is Brahma, and the ultimate reality is spiritual, is spirit, is Brahma. That was the founding.
No, I'm not getting into the aspect of it. I'm saying that did the scientific community recognize there is a knowledge system exists? There were schools of high intelligence people were living in this place. Religion came later because of the pursuit of people wanted to see what is next after life. So there were many discussions.
No, I don't think religion came later. I think the point, when you say did the scientific community know, you're talking of current modern scientific community, exactly, or people living in
the post-truth. What is truth? When the man existed in this place, everyone wanted to pursue what is the truth. Okay.
Right.
So then scientific truth, post-truth, modernism, you can call by many names. But thing is, IKS, this land parcel, there is a knowledge system existed. Is the scientific community of today's scientific community or the latest scientific community, do they recognize there is a knowledge system existed in this place?
Well, in theory, yes. In theory, they do.
I couldn't get it from your talk, so I thought, let me clarify this.
The point is, knowledge systems should not be treated as set in stone, right, correct forever. The knowledge systems of Sankhya and Nyaya have some logical content that can be carried over in modern ways of thinking, but they do not address they do not satisfy the needs for asking and answering scientific questions as they exist today. So what's happening? What's happening with the thing? It's not a question of whether we accept that IKS existed and exists today. Of course they do. The problem is their relevance. They need to be they should not be, knowledge system should not be treated as set in stone, true forever. They need to revise themselves in order to answer questions which are of interest to modern day knowledge seekers. They haven't done that.
There were 6 schools. Since people did not believe it, that were 6 schools. Otherwise, it would have been 1 school, isn't it? So there were so many. I think that there were protagonists there also. Whenever it was somebody said something, there's always a protagonist saying, disputing that. So
not so much, I don't think so much of dispute.
The six schools
there were debates.
The disputes.
Yeah, well, there were debates, but the result of the debates was not a critical look at your own doctrines, but to strengthen your doctrines. So that's a whole different. But yeah, IKS is real.
We don't have evidence. We don't have evidence to that. Saying, because when you say it says scripting in stones, when nothing is there, people are writing in stones. I come from a place in the southern part of Tamil Nadu. Okay, there where we get into these kind of stone facts and start collating with various literature and other evidences, and then trying to collate it. So the evidence means it's not a printing evidence which is available, which is we have to create.
I didn't mean a stone in that literal sense. I meant it in metaphorical sense. That
I'm saying that because in the absence of it, people started writing in stone so that the future generations can take it from whatever we are leaving it. And also the literatures of first century, second century, third century literatures which are available. So from there, we're trying to see what is the scientific temper, what is the kind of knowledge they had. So trying to think that are they the previous generations or the people living there, they have any knowledge at all. So yeah. So I think these current scientific communities recognizing that there is a knowledge system existed.
I think you are repeating the question. She has well answered your question, and it's a time for us to wind up. And
thank you.
I request Mr. Sella Kumar to provide the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Popular Science Lecture of Tamil Nadu Science Forum, I extend my gratitude our respected speaker, Dr. Meera Nanda, to take out time from his busy schedule to grace the event. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your excellent lecture, especially the fact about the deep life. A special thanks to Dr. T.R. Govindarajan, Dr. R. Ramanujam for providing immense support to make the webinar successful. I extended my thanks to Dr. Sethuraman and Mr. Vijayan and all executive committee members of PSL to organize this webinar successful. I must thank to the audience for listening the webinar and their cooperation. Thank you everyone once again for making it a great successful. Have a great weekend. Nandri, vanakkam nanbargale.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, madam. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. See
Thank you.